Evening, guys. I have an interesting video today. Interesting to me personally, at least. And I'm going to cover a couple of my pet hates when I'm working in the workshop. And this video really is brought about by a gentleman I met the other day, a couple of days ago. And I bought several saws. We started talking about fault finding and diagnosing certain problems, and it led me to remember my training. When I left school, I went to technical college back in 1978, 84. So 84, I think it was 1984, and did 3 years of HND in mechanical and electrical engineering. It's where I kind of had my workshop skill set from, and my electrical skill set. That's where it all started from. And there was something very interesting about the days when we were working next to any of the major kind of workshop equipment. So the lathes, the milling machine, the centerless grinders, some of the pillar drills, and anything we worked upon, if it involved any form of accuracy, as lots of you will have, you will probably end up using either a pair of calipers, you might use a set of dividers, you may have a engineer's table, so you know, one which is made from tool steel, has been precision milled flat, so that when you place it down you can attach either a magnetic base to it and then put a DTI off of it, and then when you measure anything on the engineer's tabletop, that's your datum. If your DTI, your needle, flicks one way or the other, you know if you're plus or minus of your tolerance. And everything has to be clean and accurate, because if you're machining a shaft, or you are looking at the tolerances on a piston in a compressor, if you're looking at your lead screw on your lathe, and you need to cut accurate screw threads, and any deviation, you'll want to be able to measure it accurately. And so for that you need an area where it's properly calibrated and you have equipment which is always giving you accurate readings. So my pet hates then. So we're talking to this gentleman, and he's got a few of his tools, and and like lots of us, you know, the tools tend to go everywhere. But what I learnt from my workshop time was the elderly technician, I won't say his name, but a fantastic guy. At the end of every day that we worked in the workshop area where the more expensive tools were kept, so the DTIs, the calipers, some of the mandrels, the test equipment, some of the more expensive tools for boring holes, some measuring sleeves, the engineers' tables that we had, they were all, at the end of the day, he'd take his tool wipes and rags, and every single tool that we had touched, every caliper, all of it would be wiped off, and then he would lock them back up inside the cabinet. That would then be in a fenced area where there was these engineers' tables as well. That would then be locked inside the locked workshop, and then of course the whole buildings are locked as well. And you think, wow, that's a little bit extreme, isn't it? You know, what's but of course it instills in you 2 or 3 fundamental principles when you're measuring things, and that is, if you need to measure something accurately, you have to be able to rely upon the equipment that you're using. You cannot, once you finish the operation, think, I wonder if that actually measured that accurately. Then that that equipment is absolutely worse, or is more, it's worse than useless. In fact, it will cost you money. And so these are my pet hates then. They are tools which, they're not even tools that are fundamentally just rubbish and break on the first or second use. Incredibly, as we'll probably show then, they actually probably do the person that is using them a real favour. The tools which I hate the most are the ones where you pick them up, they give you a reading, and you make a decision, or you do some work based on that reading, and then you put it away. The next time you take it out again and it's still giving you the wrong readings, but you just are unaware of just how dreadfully inaccurate that piece of equipment is. Right. So, and of course, this other gentleman, we all store things and do things differently, but he said that some of the lower cost equipment performs just as well as some of the more expensive equipment. Now that might be true, but fundamentally and empirically speaking, so personally testing, I have tested 4 or 5 now of the, well, it would be 6 today, pieces of equipment for testing pressure and vacuum. And I had a delivery yesterday, and so I wanted to save it for camera because it'll only work once live. Yeah, and so fundamentally we have it's a mindset. It's completely different. How you would look after tools, how important it is to separate sacrificial tools from tools which have to be maintained, and they're precious and they're valuable. And so I meant to say that the other thing you take away from that education and watching people, the way they handle tools almost like they're jewels or valuables, is that it isn't just to stop people stealing them, but it's to also stop people just casually coming up, picking it up, measuring something, throwing it down and leaving it like it's not valuable. So it gives you an inherent respect for the tools, because if your livelihood depends upon them and the work you're doing is valued, and you have a customer, or you're doing things for yourself and you want it to be reliable, then tolerances might be really, really important. So are cheap tools as good as some of the branded products? My experience says no. And so here's a untested carburetor. This carb came the other day off of one of my 162s. It's a Tillotson, I think it's a 161 or 163. Get the glasses back. In fact, I should know it because I think it's the same as my 266, which is a 163. Okay, yeah, so it's a 163A, and it's a different manifold to the 266. Engine's got some strange running characteristics, so will start perfectly, and then it tends to hunt slightly. If you rev it, it seems to peak and rev out nicely, and doesn't seem to lean out at the top end either. But then coming back down, it tends to hunt slightly. Sometimes it'll run a little rich, and other times it just will seem like it's leaning out. So could be crank seals, or could be, could be the gaskets on the intake. And I thought, we'll start with the carburetor, and I thought it'd be really interesting because we'll have a chance to test a Chinese pressure vacuum kit, and we'll test it against a better quality kit. So from Amazon, just arrived, was the Amazon's Choice, and it's really disheartening as well to see how many Chinese kits get sold. But if it's good, then it's good. So So I've been itching to want to set this up, but I thought it's much better to see it as it happens for me as well. So okay, this kit looks identical to a Silverline kit that I had maybe 6 months ago, and another, was it a Blue Point kit or a Blue Spot? Blue Point may have been branded US Pro maybe a year or so ago, but it looks uncannily similar. So okay, nice selection of little adapters. Okay, gauge. So we can pull up to approximately 1 inch of mercury in vacuum, and 3 bar, so 45, roughly 45 pounds of pressure. We should be able to. Right, so it's a sliding toggle at the nose. Okay, and there's 2 little venturis, 2 little holes, which, so in one position you're just basically covering the outlet and making it the inlet, and then vacuum this way. Nice rubber surround, nice anodized aluminium body, handle feels okay, no play. So this kit from Amazon was £30, and they'd sold, so it's an Amazon's choice, and they'd sold just under 900 kits. And I looked under the the world's biggest marketplace under eBay, and some of the vendors have sold 3,500 or 4,000 of this, exactly this look. And it had a rating of 4.5 stars from the vendor I bought this from. So, and supplied by Amazon Marketplace. Right, that's going to be very, very interesting. So it feels nice and it feels comfortable. And so back to my fueling problem then. The test I would do each time would be connect up the, it's completely filthy, but it won't affect this test anyway, and it's good to see it in situ, to see exactly why it's performing just slightly off. We'll connect up a fuel pipe to the carburetor inlet, and we'll apply only a small amount of pressure. We're not interested in blowing the diaphragm or forcing seals, or we're just interested to see, will it hold really tiny pressure, between 5 and 7 pounds of pressure, and we'll let it stay like that for maybe half a minute. We'll know really if it starts to bleed off practically straight away. I think the consensus on a crank test might be half the minute to 1 minute, but if it's got a leak, air is very searching, and it'll drop pretty well straight out. And then we'll do the same with a vacuum test, because very interestingly, particularly on crank seals, as I've seen now, you can perhaps hold pressure one way, but if the seals have folded in on themselves, they could let a vacuum in, but positive pressure they'll actually maintain, which is rather bizarre. So okay, let us see what this girl is like. And my kit I use personally is same with one of my compression kits. So this is the Mitivac American. I don't think there's a Mitivac dealer in the UK, and it's just a spectacular piece of kit again. But it's spectacular not because it's not just because its make and reputation, but because upon usage you see that every time you use it, it's consistent across the board. And I've compared this one with a snap-on unit, and we had identical results, and also my Mitivac compression tester, which again I spent a bit of money the other day just because this conversation. Then another friend I had recently, we went to test an engine's compression. He had a Gunson compression tester, and it was getting up to 40 or 50 pounds of pressure and then stopping, or it's evident the engine has much more compression. And so I'm also going to show that. I've ordered a reasonably nice compression tester, and I'll show that against my Mitivac as well on a couple of smaller engines and bigger engines, so that'll be interesting. So this girl has if you're left or right-handed, the pressure gauge rotates, has a quick release valve underneath, and a nice little 90-degree switch, so I can toggle from vacuum to positive pressure, and magnesium alloy finish. It just feels really nice. So you see I use it for various tests, for fuel testing, so I leave my test pipe on there. Okay then, let's have a look at this baby girl. So we'll use one of their little test pipes, so it's interesting. So this one comes with 3 incremental pipes, and we will use a hose adapter. So let's see how this goes together. Okay, that is a good fit. Yep, very good. Okay, feels strange. It doesn't seem to have a very progressive action, my Mitivac. Just feels beautifully engineered. So the Mitivac kits, this was around £90 at the time, but I think you can pick them up for around the £80 mark now. And they come with a real nice selection of adapters for either brake bleeding or for plugging certain size holes or orifices, so you can actually test things. But for me, it's been an invaluable piece of equipment. Okay, so we will need a fuel adapter. Have a little look at one of my test pipes, see what we have for that. Maybe that one. Okay. Okay, not that one. Perfect. Okay. So both these kits then are very similar spec. They can both go up to roughly 30 pounds of pressure, and 30 pounds of pressure on the Mitivac, 45 pounds of pressure on this unbranded Amazon's Choice one, and they both pull 1 inch of mercury, about a bar of pressure. So let's start with the Mitivac. So we'll connect this girl up. And the great thing about this machine is every time I've used it, it just gives me a perfect incremental indication of exactly how much pressure I'm applying. So it might be hard to do this back to front. So the needle just goes up gently. So we've got 7.5 pounds of pressure on the carburettor. And interesting, so if that's in shot, there you go, the carb is maintaining pressure. So I might be slightly disappointed in that. I thought the carb might be leaking, which is why it was having erratic running. But we'll do another test now. So we will bleed the pressure out, and you'll see the gauge will zero straight away. Really beautifully manufactured. We'll turn it to vacuum, and again, the idea is not to break this equipment, but just to is so progressive. And so holding a steady vacuum as well, so not leaking in reverse. And if I reset it and go back to positive pressure, what you sometimes find is maybe the valves aren't seating properly again. Get up to 7. Okay, interesting. So this carburettor is holding perfect pressure, 7 pounds. Doesn't appear to be leaking at all, and so the needle's rock steady. So if we give it a few seconds, absolutely perfect. Very interesting. Okay, we'll reset it, get the needle back to 0. Okay, and disconnect. Right, so that's the Mitivac. So here's the Amazon's choice. And then which way is that? Is that vacuum? Oh yeah, that's vacuum. Feel that pulling on the finger? Cool. Okay. Right, so this is going to be slightly back to front, but no matter. So I'll start to apply pressure. Let's see if I can do it left-handed for the camera. So bear in mind, this would be the 5th or 6th one of these, and they have never ever worked properly. Oh, okay, pressure going up. Pressure. I'll check it when I see you in a second. Is that needle even moving any further? Okay, so the needle's, I can hear something bleeding air. What do we get up to? So we have about 9 pounds of pressure. Sorry guys, compressor's going. Wow. So this gauge can supply, or this pump can supply 45 pounds of pressure, and yet it cannot actually, I can't even over-pressurize this carburettor past, it stopped at 10 psi. Okay, we'll try it on a vacuum. So we'll pull it down. So I pulled it down, and it's going to do what my last one did. The needle, I wonder if you can see that. The needle isn't centering. So this gauge is, wow. So this is an Amazon's choice, and the gauge doesn't even zero after it's being used. Okay, we'll try it on vacuum. Other way. My God, what a piece of junk. Okay, 1 second then. So we'll try and pull vacuum with it. It doesn't actually feel like it's displacing air, so okay, we've got our vacuum on there. Pump's tight. Right, so it's, there you go. So I think it's pulled, just over half a bar of vacuum. No, and that's the lot. Okay, and then we'll release it and see how it centers. And so the needle still, once you've tried to clear the chamber with this little toggle sleeve, it's just coming back to 0 now. Okay, well, So it's hard to know what to say about that, other than it's obviously it's absolute junk, but really it's slightly more dangerous than that in terms of as being classed as an engineering tool, because you imagine that there's thousands of people out there using this equipment, and what are they actually testing with it? If you pick this up and went out to your workshop and you connected up a carburettor on a piece of equipment that you valued and you wish to diagnose, how on earth would this help you? I guess if you sat there, if you didn't care about the pressure you were putting in, it might, again, you know, what's the point of even having to guess that? It might hold positive pressure on there, and it may not leak it, and it might hold a vacuum on there, so it might pull up to what it can do. But the fact that it's supposed to be calibrated, what we need to do is we need to plug it off, and we'll see how much pressure they can generate. Yeah, okay, let's get a plug. Right. Naturally, we've got perfect. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to blank off the end and show you what the Mitivac does if I close the open-ended pipe and positive pressure. Let's see how progressive this piece of equipment applies pressure. Up to now, sorry guys, £18, £26 of pressure, over £30. So the Mitivac actually outperforms how far the gauge actually goes up to. It's an impressive piece of kit. Right, let's bleed that off. Dial comes straight back to 0. I'll put it into vacuum. This will be very interesting. Okay, here we go then. So can pull 1 inch, and it is pulling 26 mil. So it factory pulls. Oh, look at that! You can see it pulling and kinking the pipe work. Absolutely fantastic. The pipe's gone oval and it's actually buckling here. Amazing. We'll release it, straight back to 0. Right. Let's let's try this piece of kit. It'll be very interesting. So imagine you take your valued piece of equipment, maybe a chainsaw or another small engine device, to a garage that you trust to get a job done, and they're one of the tens of thousands of customers that are using this equipment for testing. I mean, how would you feel? Okay, so we've plugged it, we're into pressure mode. Is that pressure? Wow, what a piece of junk. Okay, here we go then. So, pressure. Oh, I can feel it leaking. What has it managed? It's managed 8 psi. If I touch this, it's leaking around this sleeve. It can't even seal. It can't even seal on its on the little sleeve which you toggle between vacuum and positive pressure. Okay, we'll go for a vacuum, although it's really pointless. it's leaking somewhere, and it can't. What did that get to? just under half a bar. So it's, wow, it's even worse than the last one I bought. I'm pretty sure the last, the last piece of kit I bought, actually ran up to 20 odd pounds of pressure, and so this one has even exceeded my worst expectations. So there we go. So no, I wouldn't have lost that bet. And so this is the difference then between Chinese pressure vac tester, Mitivac, American made, spectacular pressure and vacuum tester, £30, £80, and so if any of you have these and you think you're getting a reliable reading from it, I'd love to hear. And I'd love to hear if you've actually compared it with any other equipment. So mine's been compared to a Sealy and a Snap-on, and with the Snap-on it's identical, and the gauge and the action is progressive and spectacular, and this is just junk. And so if you were relying upon this, you could be coming out, putting pressure in, thinking, yeah, that's holding, or not, or otherwise. Or you could be thinking it's leaking, and again, it's the equipment leaking. Hey guys, so I thought that might be interesting to see. So this piece of equipment is going to be sent back, and I'll just do a little report for them and just tell them exactly why it's coming back. If this had functioned, you could keep one as a, I don't like cheap equipment because it's just, but if it had proven to be accurate and easy to use, then there's no harm in having a vac gauge as a spare in your other workshop if you've more than one location. But that is just a, well, that is worse than junk. Guys, thanks for watching, and I will, next time then, I'll show you a compression test, and this will also be very, very interesting. This is my Mitivac compression tester. So this was about 125, I think, when I bought it, but particularly good for working on small engines with small displacements, and as there is the most important, the very, very lightly sprung Schrader valves in the extensions, which is so important for accurate reading on small engines. You cannot stress enough how important that is to have that fitted. So I've ordered another Amazon choice bestseller, and we'll see how it performs back to back with, again, something proven calibrated. Guys, stay safe. Bye for now.